Alan Watts once observed something that most people still haven't grasped. He noticed that the moment someone truly wakes up, they become unbearable to society. Not because they're difficult or rebellious, but because they can no longer participate in the collective hallucination. And right now, according to what Watts discovered decades ago, this phenomenon is happening on a scale we've never seen before. The awakened ones are vanishing. No drama. No manifestos. No angry exits from social media with long-winded explanations. They're simply fading into the margins, choosing silence over the deafening noise of modern life. And if you've felt this magnetic pull yourself, if you've been wondering why you can no longer stomach the small talk, the performance, the desperate grasping for meaning in meaningless things, then what I'm about to share will bring you profound relief. Because this withdrawal isn't antisocial behavior. It's not depression. It's not you being broken or difficult or too sensitive. According to Alan Watts, this is actually the most natural response in the world when consciousness expands beyond the boundaries society has constructed for it. It's what happens when you can finally see the game being played, and you realize you never actually agreed to play it in the first place. Most people are living what's called the skin-encapsulated ego. They believe they are separate, isolated beings fighting for survival in a hostile universe. And when you're trapped in that illusion, everything makes sense. The competition, the comparison, the constant performance. But the moment that illusion cracks, the moment you glimpse what Watts spent his life pointing toward, everything changes. You can't go back to sleep once you've tasted what it means to be truly awake. So let me tell you exactly what's happening to you. And why it's not just okay, but absolutely necessary. Alan Watts said that the difference between waking and sleeping consciousness isn't about information. It's about perception itself fundamentally shifting. I'm not talking about reading spiritual books or collecting concepts about enlightenment. I'm talking about that devastating moment when you see that almost everything people are doing is unconscious role-playing. They're reciting scripts they didn't write, pursuing goals they didn't choose, defending positions they inherited. According to Watts, society is essentially a game of pretend that only works when everyone agrees to stay in character. People are pretending their jobs define them. Pretending their opinions are original thoughts. Pretending the things they worry about actually matter in any ultimate sense. And when you're asleep yourself, this is completely fine. You fit right in. You can engage in conversations about nothing and feel perfectly fulfilled. You can spend hours debating things that have no real substance and call it meaningful discourse. But the moment you wake up, what's discovered, it's like walking out of a dark movie theater into bright afternoon sunlight. And when you try to go back inside, when you attempt to sit down and lose yourself in the flickering images again, you simply cannot do it. Because now you know it's just light and shadow dancing on a screen. You know it's not real. This is what's happening to awakening people right now. They're finding that they can no longer participate in the collective trance. Not because they're superior or more evolved or holier than anyone else. Alan Watts would have been the first to reject that kind of spiritual egotism. No, it's because their nervous system literally cannot tolerate the pretending anymore. Their consciousness has expanded, and you cannot force expanded consciousness back into a small container without causing tremendous damage. You see, society operates on what's called the taboo against knowing who you really are. Everyone must participate in this mutual self-deception for it to work. But when someone wakes up, they break the unspoken agreement. They forget their lines. They start seeing through the performance. And this makes everyone extremely uncomfortable. Alan Watts discovered something crucial about awakened consciousness. He found that once you can see what's really happening beneath the surface of social interaction, you cannot unsee it. The awakened person suddenly perceives the fear hiding behind confidence. They see the desperate emptiness beneath all the busyness. They recognize that most conflicts people engage in have nothing to do with what they think they're fighting about. According to Watts, when someone points at another group and declares, "Those people are the problem," what they're really doing is projecting their own unexamined darkness outward. When society divides itself into us versus them, both sides are essentially shadow boxing with mirrors. They're fighting aspects of themselves they refuse to acknowledge. And once you see this mechanism clearly, you cannot take it seriously anymore. You cannot participate in the blame, the judgment, the righteous indignation, because you understand it's all projection. It's one massive, exhausting game of pointing fingers to avoid looking within. Alan Watts called this, the backwards law. The more desperately people try to fix the external world, the more they reveal their refusal to face their internal chaos. So what does the awakened person do? They withdraw. Not out of hatred for humanity, but because staying in the game requires betraying what they've seen. Every conversation demands they pretend they don't see what they see. Every social gathering requires performing a version of themselves that no longer exists. Every interaction asks them to contract, to dim their light, to translate their depth into shallow terms just to maintain belonging. And eventually, according to Watts, the deeper self simply says enough. Stop betraying your own consciousness. Stop performing personalities that aren't yours. Stop translating truth into lies just to be accepted by people who are terrified of truth. Now, this is not spiritual bypassing. Watts was very clear about this distinction. This is not running away from responsibility or hiding from life's challenges. This is the recognition that staying in unconscious environments actively damages consciousness. It's like asking a plant to thrive in complete darkness. It might survive for a while, clinging to stored energy, but eventually it will wither and die. The awakened person discovers that unconscious environments aren't just uncomfortable. They're genuinely depleting. They drain the life force required to maintain wakefulness. Alan Watts observed that awakened people face an impossible choice. Maintain consciousness or maintain belonging. You cannot have both, at least not in unconscious environments. Every moment you spend surrounded by people who are asleep, you must work incredibly hard just to stay awake yourself. You must constantly filter out projections. You must hold your center while chaos swirls around you. You must remain clear while everyone else exists in a fog of confusion. This takes tremendous energy. Invisible energy that no one sees or appreciates. According to Watts, you're doing psychological and spiritual work that others aren't even aware needs to be done. And after a while, you realize you're spending all your life force just trying to stay conscious in spaces actively designed to pull you back to sleep. So you make the hardest choice of your life. You choose consciousness over belonging. You choose truth over acceptance. You choose your own clarity over the approval of people who cannot see what you see. And this is when the disappearing begins. First, you leave social media. Alan Watts would have recognized these platforms immediately for what they are, machines designed to keep people trapped in the comparative mind. Every scroll is an invitation to judgment, comparison, outrage, distraction. For someone who's awakened, it feels like drowning in toxic waste. So you simply stop. You delete the apps. You stop checking. And suddenly you have hours of your life returned. Then you start leaving social circles. Not with anger or dramatic announcements. You just stop showing up. Because you've realized that most gatherings are elaborate performances. People performing their success, their happiness, their certainty. And you can no longer perform. Your authentic self has emerged, and it has absolutely no interest in pretending. According to Watts, this is when you discover something extraordinary. The relationships you thought were deep connections were actually just mutual agreements to never look too closely at anything real. They were comfortable precisely because they remained superficial. And now that you've gone deep, there's nothing left to discuss. Alan Watts made a crucial distinction that most people completely miss. He discovered there's a profound difference between loneliness and what he called aloneness. Loneliness is what you feel when you're surrounded by people who cannot see you. Aloneness is what you experience when you're finally free to exist without performance, without translation, without constantly editing yourself to fit into spaces too small for your consciousness. When the awakened person withdraws, something remarkable happens. In solitude, they finally stop being lonely. You see, according to Watts, you were never really with other people even when physically surrounded by them. Because genuine connection requires consciousness meeting consciousness. And when you're awake in a room full of sleeping people, there's no one there to actually meet. You're alone in a crowd, which is the deepest loneliness there is. But in chosen solitude, in that quiet space away from noise and performance and projection, you finally meet yourself. Really meet yourself. Not the version you've been performing for others. Not the role society assigned you. But the actual living, breathing consciousness that you are. And this, Watts discovered, is not lonely at all. This is coming home. In this space, you can finally hear your own thoughts without the constant interference of other people's opinions. You can feel your own feelings without absorbing everyone else's emotional chaos. You can discover what you actually want, what you genuinely believe, who you truly are beneath all the conditioning. Alan Watts called this, the wisdom of insecurity. In solitude, you stop seeking security in other people's approval and find something far more stable, your own presence. This is what I call the hermit phase, and Watts understood it's absolutely necessary for transformation. You cannot become a butterfly while maintaining all your caterpillar commitments. You cannot shed your old skin while people keep demanding you stay exactly as you were. There must be a withdrawal, a cocooning, a sacred time of deep internal work. During this phase, you're not escaping. You're integrating. You're processing years of absorbed unconsciousness. You're healing wounds that came from pretending to be someone you weren't. You're developing the strength to stand in truth even when everyone around you is still lost in illusion. According to Alan Watts, this is the hardest work there is. Much harder than staying asleep. Alan Watts discovered something fascinating about people who complete this hermit phase. They don't stay hidden forever. Eventually, they return to society. But they return completely transformed. They come back as what Watts called spiritual outlaws. People who exist in the world but no longer belong to it. They participate without being absorbed. They engage without becoming entangled. According to Watts, once you've done the deep work of integration, once you've faced your shadow and found your authentic self, you're no longer dependent on others for your sense of reality. You're not looking for approval or validation or belonging anymore. You found something infinitely more valuable. You found yourself. And from this place of genuine self-knowledge, if you choose to return to society, you return as an entirely different frequency. You become what I call a border dweller. Someone who lives on the edge between the sleeping world and the awakened world. You're present but not absorbed. Available but not dependent. Engaged but not entangled. Alan Watts lived this way himself. He was in the world, speaking to thousands, writing books, engaging with culture. But he was never of it. He maintained that crucial distance that allowed him to see clearly. You might work with individuals who are beginning to stir in their sleep. You might create art that speaks to depths most people are terrified to explore. You might write words that serve as maps for other disappearing souls. Or you might simply live your life with such radical authenticity that others begin to wonder if there's another way to exist. But you never return to the mainstream. You cannot. Because, as Watts constantly reminded us, once you've tasted consciousness, you cannot go back to sleep. Once you've touched your authentic self, you cannot resume performing a role. Once you've seen through the game, you cannot pretend it's real. The spell is broken permanently. Now, some people will ask. Isn't this selfish? Shouldn't we stay engaged and try to wake others up? According to Alan Watts, this question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding. You cannot give what you don't have. If you haven't fully awakened yourself, if you haven't done your own inner work, then you have nothing real to offer others. You're just one more sleeping person trying to wake up other sleeping people. You're spreading confusion while claiming to bring clarity. Alan Watts spent his entire life giving people permission to be who they actually are. And right now, I'm extending that same permission to you. If you're feeling the pull to disappear, if you're finding it harder and harder to participate in normal society, if you're losing interest in the games and performances and noise, then listen to that pull. According to Watts, it's your soul calling you home. It's your consciousness demanding the space it needs to fully emerge. Don't fight it. Don't feel guilty. Don't try to force yourself to stay engaged with things that drain your life force. Give yourself complete permission to withdraw. Permission to be alone. Permission to disappear for however long it takes. This isn't permanent. You will return when you're ready. But you'll return as someone whole, someone authentic, someone capable of offering real consciousness rather than more unconscious performance. In the meantime, use your solitude well. Do the deep work Watts pointed toward his entire life. Integrate your shadow. Find your authentic self beneath the layers of conditioning. Develop genuine consciousness, because this is what the world actually needs. Not more people pretending to be awake, but individuals who have truly awakened. The spiritually awake are disappearing because they must. Because consciousness cannot develop in unconscious environments. Because authenticity cannot emerge while performing a role. Because truth cannot be found while participating in collective delusion. Alan Watts understood this completely. He knew that transformation requires isolation before it enables connection. So let yourself go. Withdraw without guilt. Disappear without apology. Be alone without loneliness. And trust that you're following an ancient pattern, a necessary pattern, the pattern every awakening person must follow. The caterpillar dissolves in the cocoon before becoming the butterfly. The seed breaks apart in dark soil before becoming the tree. The awakened person withdraws from society before returning with something real to offer. This is not the end. According to Alan Watts, this is the beginning. The beginning of genuine consciousness in a world desperately starving for it. So disappear if you must. And know that in your disappearing, you're actually preparing something beautiful. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it.